Doug, there are 435 members of Congress, 220 Republicans, 215 Democrats, four vacancies. It's a big group of people. And as you would expect in a big group of people like that, you know, you have some that you like more than others.
Mm-hmm.
I always joke that, our candidates are like our kids. We love them all, but we have favorites.
Yeah.
And today on the podcast, we have one of our favorites with us. Congressman Ted Lieu from California's 36th congressional district. One of our favorites, not just because he's a Cleveland Browns fan, but also because he has been such a leader in standing up to Donald Trump and his horrible administration and trying to advance the things that will make life better for people, putting the common good into action. So, Congressman Lieu, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now you've let the whole world know I have bad judgment.
That's right. We'll try not to hold that against you, that you don't know how to pick a football team or a city. Hey, Ted, you not only are we proud of the work you're doing now, but for nearly 8 years, you've been really supportive of the work that we've been up to and trying to call people of common good conscience and faith to join the Democratic Party and voting that way. So I want to thank you for all of your good work that we're doing. And just kind of want to ask you right now, how are you feeling about the prospects for what Congress will look like in 2026 after the election?
I am a lot more optimistic now than I was last year. And what I like to say is Trump has already lost. He had this dark vision for America that he believed American people were going to embrace. American people have not done that. And so, for example, he thought he could send mass federal agents across America to terrorize communities. And what we saw in Minnesota and elsewhere is you had ordinary Americans go out in freezing weather and protest every day and live stream ICE, follow ICE agents, document what they were doing at great risk to themselves for people they didn't even know. And that was amazing, inspiring to watch. And that energy is going to carry into this November's elections. And I believe we will flip the House and we might even flip the Senate.
Well, I think it's true as well. I think that kind of energy, if to borrow a phrase from Martin Luther King, if we can march on the ballot box as well as march in the streets, there can be a significant shift happening. There's a lot of people, Ted, who say things like, and my wife is one of them, why doesn't somebody do something? And people in their own lives try to figure out what they can do. You're a member of Congress. I'm sure you feel that way. What encouragement do you have for people who feel the way my wife does and thousands of other people that we've talked to in our work that feel like they just want Democrats and elected officials to stand up and do something, and they have this feeling there's not enough happening? How do you respond to that as one of the hundreds of members who have that relationship with the American people being a representative?
I know exactly how your wife is feeling. I feel that way all the time. And one of the interesting things that has occurred to me, I never really understood how countries became authoritarian because I'm wondering why would the people let that happen? And now it's pretty clear to me that it's very easy for this to happen because even though the overwhelming majority of Americans disagree with what's happening, many people don't know what they can do about it. And so let's say something the administration does you find really despicable and awful. Are you going to storm the White House? Probably not. And so what can you actually do? And it's taken the American people some time to figure that out, as well as elected officials. And now you do see enormous pushback from the No Kings marches, the largest in U.S. history, to folks, as I mentioned, documenting ICE and taking actions at great risk themselves, to folks who are taking their own initiative to run for office, such as Robb, to folks who are speaking out because the authoritarian regime just wants you to be silent. And now I think Abraham Lincoln's quote is even more resonant, which is public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. And this administration has lost public sentiment, and the American people are pushing back.
Yeah. The Democrats in Congress are also pushing back, Ted. And, it's been really heartening to see, some of that real action from folks in Congress like yourself, particularly on some of the most. I mean, I don't know. There's so much stuff is so deeply troubling. Um, the SAVE Act, in particular, is one of these things that many of us are very, very concerned about. And I personally think it will, even if it gets signed into law, it will never actually take effect. The courts will strike it down for being essentially creating a poll tax, which we know is unconstitutional. But you've been providing some strong leadership on the dangers of the SAVE Act and why it needs to be defeated. Can you give us an update on that and why that is such an important issue to you?
Yes, I am not opposed to voter ID. I'm opposed to insane voter ID requirements. And the SAVE Act has insane requirements. It basically requires you to have a passport or a birth certificate that matches your name exactly. So in 45 states, your driver's license will not work under these requirements. Student IDs will not work. Even a military ID will not work. And I've served in the military 4 years active duty, additional 21 years in the reserves. That ID lets me get into very sensitive locations, but it wouldn't let me vote. So this is insane if you look at the voter suppression that's going to happen, because a lot of people don't actually have a passport, and a lot of folks don't have a birth certificate lying around, or if they want to order one, that's going to take a while. It might be too late for them to vote. Or if you happen to change your name because, for example, you got married, you can't use that birth certificate anymore. And so it's going to disenfranchise a lot of people. And that's why I'm opposed to the SAVE Act. Now, what would actually happen electorally? I do agree, by the way, that the courts would strike it down because it's mass voter suppression. But I got to tell you, I think more Republicans would be hurt by this. If you look at, for example, the top 10 states with the people with the least number of passports, they're all red states.
Yeah.
And so
What?
this requirement is just bad all around, but I think it's also going to hurt Republicans.
Then why is Donald Trump so convinced that passing the SAVE Act is the thing that will guarantee Republican electoral victories for the next 50 years, as I think he said to Republican gathering?
Donald Trump knows he's going to lose, and he needs an excuse for why he's about to lose. And that's what I think is driving all of this. Either that or, I mean, he is also batshit crazy. So maybe he honestly believe that somehow people.
Yeah, did they really believe that millions
numbers? I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, did they really believe that millions of non-citizens have voted in our elections?
Anyone who's looked at this for more than 2 minutes realizes that that is a problem that doesn't exist. So let's just first think about reality. If you're an undocumented immigrant, do you want to send your information to the government that might be trying to deport you? There's no way you would do that, because voting requires 2 steps. The first is you have to register to vote. How many undocumented immigrants are going to take that step? It turns out like almost zero. And that's why if you look at the number of undocumented immigrants that actually vote, it is almost zero. And the ones that they do end up voting, many of them are by mistake because they think, oh, they have a green card, they can vote. And well, you can't. But you have very few undocumented immigrants who actually send all their information to the government to register to vote.
Hey, Ted, while we're talking about elections, I was really shocked, frankly, in, I don't know, November 5th, 2024, the way the election went. I really believed that Kamala Harris would win that presidential election. I thought Democrats would maintain control of the House of Representatives. Did you think so too? And were you surprised? And I know a lot of us have been waiting a long time for the DNC and for the system to give an autopsy of what happened in 2024. And the things I'm hearing from them now are like, hey, we don't want to look back. We want to look forward. But do you have a sense of what happened and what can be done about it moving forward, baking in the fact that, yes, Donald Trump is harmful to this country, to the planet, to everyone who lives on it, but he was in 2016 to 2020 as well. So do you have a sense of what happened and what can be the pathway forward here?
I'll give you my personal view. I think most people don't pay a lot of attention to politics. They're busy. They're trying to make ends meet. They're interested in other things. And if you look at what happened last presidential election, Kamala Harris won by about 15 points, people who paid attention to the news. Unfortunately, she lost by more than that. People who were infrequent voters, people who didn't pay as much attention. And what that told me is that folks that are having trouble making ends meet or have other things going on in their life, they were simply looking at the election going, well, is my life better now or is it worse now? And they simply took it out on the government if they felt that their life was worse. And for many people, their lives, in fact, were worse because inflation had been quite high, and price shock is something that people have a very hard time dealing with. And if you look worldwide, the overall majority of governments that experience price shock lost their next election. And so I think oftentimes the simplest explanation, like Occam's razor, is the easiest, which is if you're having trouble making ends meet and you don't like how high your grocery prices are, you're going to vote against the government in power. And that's why also Trump is now at the lowest approval rating ever, because inflation has actually increased under Donald Trump, and things are even more expensive now than they were last January.
Yeah. It's got to be frustrating for you to watch this happen because no matter the political benefits that one party might see if a president is doing poorly, when a president is this bad at their job, it actually really hurts the American people. It hurts the country's relationship with other nations. It actually hurts the planet. Is it particularly hard for you to be in a position of, elected power and still watch the whole project of America feel like it's struggling so severely?
It is. That's why I go visit the ESPN website a lot more. Get my mind away from things. And having been a Browns fan, I am quite resilient. But yes, I do every day because it's part of my job. I read about the horrible, awful things this administration is doing. Now, I do believe the tide is turning. On the House Judiciary Committee, we held 2 oversight hearings on Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi. They were both gone from their positions. We also did an oversight hearing last year on Kash Patel. There are now media articles saying that Trump wants to remove him, which I think would be fantastic. And so you're starting to see the administration react to public sentiment. And I do think the pushback from the American people and from also some Republican members of Congress is causing this administration to backtrack in a number of areas.
Ted, with Pam Bondi being out as Attorney General and possibly Kash Patel being out as the head of the FBI, what does this mean for where we're at in terms of the Epstein files? And Doug asked the question that his wife asked. I'll ask the question that my wife always asks me: is, are they going to get away with it?
So depends on what you mean by they. So a number of people that were involved with Epstein's sex trafficking ring are now facing the consequences. So when I did my questioning of Attorney General Pam Bondi, I opened up with a series of questions about former Prince Andrew and showed a picture of him with a sexual assault victim and asked basically why nothing had been done. Well, now it turns out the British authorities are going after former Prince Andrew, have opened up a criminal investigation of him. You see other people have resigned from their jobs. You see other countries also pursuing criminal investigations for some of the folks that have surfaced in Epstein files. So In fact, a lot of these people are no longer going to get away with it. Now, if you talk about Donald Trump, who is all over the Epstein files, let's see what happens, because not all the files have been
Hmm.
released, and the ones that have been released have been redacted in such a way that I think they were protecting Donald Trump. And even now, when members of Congress are allowed to go to the Department of Justice and view the unredacted
Hmm.
files, some of them are in fact still redacted. And so I've been calling on the Department of Justice to unredact all the files for members of Congress to see.
Yeah.
You know, for
Do you
for the
think
4 years of the Biden administration, and we talked about this so often on our podcast, I was like, look, we should just get the Epstein files things beyond us. Like, I didn't want to talk about it. I certainly didn't want to talk about how he died. It felt like being trolled by a bunch of people who rarely tell the truth in politics, is what it felt like to me. Then it turns out those people were right, and I was wrong about that. And the thing I've had a hard time wrapping my head around, and I wonder how you're thinking about it, is why over 4 years of a Justice Department led by Merrick Garland, not by Pam Bondi, there were no charges brought. There was this attitude, nothing we can do about it, nothing to see here, nothing to release. Do you have questions, or do you feel comfortable as to why the Justice Department, for the last four of the last 5 years, didn't do anything about these same questions that you were rightly raising to Pam Bondi?
So I think part of it is the Justice Department was preoccupied with January 6th, and they devote a lot of resources to the criminals who assaulted our Capitol on January 6th. Now, unfortunately, they didn't devote enough time to the mastermind behind it all, Donald Trump. And so I do hold the top officials at the Department of Justice accountable for not focusing on Donald Trump. And then when they decided to do so, it was too late. And for the life of me, I don't understand why they didn't reverse the order and go after the mastermind instead of after the people that followed the
Yeah.
mastermind. If I had to guess, I think the top officials at the Department of Justice interjected their own politics into the facts and intentionally slowed down what if you had normally just let the facts occur, they would have gone after the mastermind pretty quickly.
Yeah, they kind of waited for you all to run a congressional inquiry into January 6th before they even started that bit of work. I don't know it, and I'm not trying to get you into hot water or anything else. I just wonder, because you've been so tireless on this administration after the law was passed to release to the public these documents. Those were documents that have all been seen by people who were in the Justice Department, first Trump's Justice Department, and then Biden's Justice Department, now Trump's Justice Department again. And boy, it makes an average person just feel like there's something going on here where the cover-up just feels bigger than the normal thing we would expect, which is, of course, Donald Trump did horrible things, and his instinct is to lie and cover up his behavior. But it feels like that's more than this. Do you have a sense that it's more than that?
So if you look at the files, what you do see is there was an open investigation, and they were taking various steps. They were just really slow about it.
Okay.
And it wasn't until last summer that Attorney General Pam Bondi literally closed the investigation. So it was an open investigation.
I got you.
Because
Okay.
it was an open investigation, you don't release documents or files from that. That's why none of it surfaced publicly, because they were in fact continuing to investigate. They were just awfully slow. And part of it, again, I think was just the resources were devoted to other things.
Okay. Boy, that's helpful, Ted. Thanks for that, because I'd forgotten that when she came out and said, we've determined there's no crimes here, we're going to close the investigation, that wasn't just a statement she was making. There was actually a legal category change from an open investigation to a closed investigation. Is that right?
Yes, that's the only reason the Department of Justice would have made that statement. That is correct.
Okay. Well, thank you though for your work. That
Yeah.
For some reason, the algorithm of Instagram wants me to watch that clip repeatedly, so they must know what thrills my heart. But watching you be so direct with the Attorney General and to say to her, I think you've committed a crime just now. How did that feel to say that? Because that was a weighty moment. She got very defensive. I think that probably precipitated her end of her role in the Justice Department. But how did it feel when you heard her say the things she said, and then you had to say to her, "Look, I think what you just did right here is paramount to perjury and to committing a crime"?
I had watched her testify at other hearings, and I, in my mind, sort of had a sense of how she was going to answer certain questions. And I thought she might actually say something like that. And so I wasn't all that surprised when she responded the way that she did. And in the back of my mind, I thought, well, if she says something like that, then this is what I'm going to follow up with. And she, in fact, did say what I thought she was going to say. And so I just followed up with
Okay.
what I had planned on saying if in fact she was going to say that. And she did. So
Well,
it does turn out that people also are somewhat predictable. If you watch sort of how they answer prior questions at prior hearings, they tend to try to do the same thing at future hearings.
Well, in my mind, it was basically that scene out of A Few Good Men when Tom Cruise is interrogating Colonel Jessup, and he turns around and the lawyers shake their head like, "Don't do it." And he says, "Did you order the code red?" I don't know if you saw that movie or saw that scene, but he reaches that point of confrontation where he had to decide, am I going to say it right now or not? That's what that felt like to me. It didn't feel like it was just political theater. It felt like you were saying, I think you're the Attorney General of the United States and you just committed perjury here because it's clear that there were crimes that Donald Trump was accused of and you haven't investigated any of them by her own definition. So it felt like a very, I don't know, like a weighty moment.
Thank you. I love that movie. And as a former JAG officer, I tell everyone being in the JAG is just like that.
Every day you're just moving around, hitting baseballs in your house, swinging your bat, and thinking through the big cases when you're going to take on a general.
Now, I do want to note that I have written a letter with Congressman Dan Goldman to Todd Blanche, who's now the interim Attorney General, asking for a special counsel to be appointed to investigate Pam Jury for committing a crime during the congressional hearing. And so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah. Congressman, what's next? What are you, we've kind of talked about some of the things that you have been doing and leadership that you've been providing. What as you look at the next 6-7 months as we head into the midterms, is there any particular issues or anything that you're really looking forward to advocating for in the next several months?
So I'm honored my colleagues elected me as vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus, their number 4 position in leadership. And so I've been going around the country trying to help members flip seats. In terms of
Arkansas third.
Let's start alphabetically. What are you most excited about alphabetically?
So I've seen great energy on the ground in terms of the activism of people who are freaked out by what this administration is doing. And there, in terms of issues, one thing that people seem quite freaked out about is artificial intelligence. I'm also a recovering computer science major. So Leader Jeffries has appointed me as a co-chair of their Democratic AI Commission. The other 2 co-chairs are Congresswoman Valerie Foushee from the Research Triangle area of North Carolina, as well as Congressman Josh Gottheimer. And we're meeting with academia and nonprofits and civil society, industry, other caucus members, and the public to come up with a framework for what we would do once we flip the House, because the Republicans' own strategy on AI basically appears to be suppress all legislation and then sell high-performance chips to China, AI chips to China. We don't agree with what the Republican strategy is.
Mm-hmm.
How about on immigration? You know, you're right that for a lot of people, the question going into the election in 2024 was the economy and inflation, which I think came from COVID response and COVID spending. And you could see inflation coming when the government had to put billions of dollars into the U.S. economy to keep it afloat during those difficult years of economic stagnancy. So, yeah, inflation was a big deal. But for a lot of people, what I believe are the lies told by the Republican Party and not responded to by Democrats about the border. We spend a lot of time at the border. There was never an open border. Just the things that people believed about it. Is there anything happening in the Democratic caucus about what will be done to be sure that legislation like Veronica Escobar's legislation or other ones could be passed so that a situation that has not served America well, which has been our immigration system, really for generations now, is addressed? Is that top of the mind for people? Does it feel like it's still a political issue that needs to be solved? And more importantly, is it a human rights issue and a legal issue?
Leader Jeffries created the Immigration Working Group that is chaired by Pete Aguilar. I'm also on this working group along with about 20 other members. And so we're working on legislation, comprehensive immigration legislation that will address both what's happening in the interior as well as the border, with the goal of not doing a messaging bill, but actually doing a bill that could pass the House and the Senate and be signed into law. I think the overwhelming majority of American people recognize our immigration system is broken, and Democrats have to be the party that has a fix to our immigration system. And so we're working on that issue right now. And it's a critical issue, and we can't just keep on going the way we're going, because you're going to continue to have horrible abuses that you see now by this administration in terms of immigration enforcement. And you also have a lot of people living in the shadows, and we have to make sure that we can both continue to let in legal immigrants and then give people a path to citizenship for those who are undocumented, and continue to have a strong border.
Yeah, our organization did a lot of work around the border and tried to bring people running for Congress down to the border. We did a cross-country bike ride from San Diego to St. Augustine, Florida. We made a documentary about that, and PBS has just picked up that documentary. We just got this word the other day, and it's really great. And it's called "Who's the We?" And the question we ask in the documentary is, when we say "we the people," who do we mean, and who decides who the we is? So my encouragement would be, whatever messaging does go on for the legislation and the legislation itself, that fundamental question about who are we including in this country is, I think, something that Americans want to rally around. I think they want to think about it, and they want to respond to it. And these ICE attacks on our cities, I live in Minneapolis, and I know, an attack like this from the federal government on our city, it has made people sharpen their minds about who this city is, who our state is, who our country is. And people are deciding. It includes immigrants and refugees, people born here, people not born here. But I feel like that's a real fundamental question. So any legislation that can help to address the question of who's the we, because Republicans, frankly, have a very dark notion. I think they've bought into an us versus them that doesn't include a we at all. I think there is no notion of we the people. There is our side and the rest of you, and if we win, then we win. And they've been saying that over and over again.
Yeah, I don't understand how Republican Christians can ignore Matthew 25:35. It's pretty clear how that verse goes. And so, I'm astounded by how unchristian many of the Republican purported Christians are.
Yeah. It should pierce the conscience a bit, one would think. Yeah.
Well, Congressman, you have been very generous with your time, and we appreciate that. We're just a little lowly podcast here, trying to trying to do what we can.
Just struggling to keep afloat.
That's right. I mean, we're what the number 4 ranked progressive Christian podcast in America, which is like being a medium-sized fish in a very small pond. So could you break any news for us that would get us, get us some coverage? You want to could you break any news for us? No? Okay. It's worth a shot.
Yeah, we ask everybody anything. You got anything to bump us to number 3?
Sure. I believe we're going to flip the U.S. Senate as well.
Great.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a lot going on in California.
Yeah. My friend Mary Peltola was an amazing member of Congress. She's now running in Alaska. Her last poll had her up 5 points.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic.
It's really great. There's a lot going on in California. I know we got to run, but one scenario I've been hearing a lot about is that somehow in the primaries, Democrats are going to split their votes across a number of candidates. Republicans are going to solidify around 2, and you could end up through the jungle primary approach of California with no Democrat being on the ballot in November. Is that realistic for California? And if not, what's being done to make sure that doesn't happen? Do you have any inside thoughts on that?
I do. So certainly it's possible that happens. Now, I do think many voters don't pay attention because, we're very busy people and other things to do until maybe a few weeks out. And so I think as the field consolidates, I think there's a lesser chance of that happening. And I do think a number of the candidates are polling at 1 or 2% or are still going to be polling at 1 to 2%. But the ones that are polling much higher, you're going to see them start to skyrocket. And then I think you're going to see the differentiation. That's my sense of what's going to happen.
Okay.
Have you endorsed anybody in that race?
Yes, I've endorsed my friend and colleague Eric Swalwell. He's my seatmate on House Judiciary Committee, and he's done an amazing job in Congress. He'll do an amazing job as governor.
Somehow his name showed up in this Pam Bondi story too. I don't know what on earth. I was like, what? I don't know. Who? Do you know anything about any of that? That somehow Trump was mad that Pam Bondi's buddies with Swalwell?
I do not. But
okay.
Even if I did, whatever Trump thinks one day, he could think something else the next day.
That's what I thought. I thought, well, this
is true.
Yeah. Well, I know what we think of you, Representative Lieu, and that is we think so highly of you. Thank you for all your good work, for your leadership, and for being the kind of person that really makes such a difference for those of us who still believe that the people we represent, the people that represent us, and the people we vote for make a difference in our society and our country. So thanks for your great work.
Thank you so much for what you do. And